Hey there, everyone. This is Samuel Johnson, and welcome back to the Spider-Verse Retrospectives. Apologies that this is a day late. I delayed the Friday vlog to Saturday, so likewise I pushed the Saturday vlog to Sunday. So, like I said, apologies, but we're back now. Hopefully, someone is watching this, and well, as I mentioned on Thursday, we're reaching the home stretch of the Spider-Verse era of these vlogs. And well, to kick things off, we're going to be starting our look at the second half of the Web Warriors comic with this Web Warriors Volume 2, Spiders Versus. And no, you did not mishear me. This is indeed the second half of Web Warriors. Unfortunately, while I myself loved Web Warriors and thought it was a really cool comic to really delve back into Spider-Verse, but have it be without actually having to have this whole universe shattering what's it's going on. At the same time, I think, and again, this is just my own interpretation. I didn't do any research on this. From what I can tell, I don't think the book really reached its audience. And as a result, this ongoing series wound up just lasting 11 issues, which honestly I think sucks because when you have like an infinite multiverse of spider people and and the main gimmick of your book is bringing them together and every now and then to fight bad guys together, I think that would be kind of awesome to have just to see all these different versions of the same character interacting, all of them having some things in common since technically speaking they're all different versions of the same guy, but because they're all from different universes and grew up in different environments, have different demeanors and so on, you can see clashing of styles and see try to work alongside each other, adapt to one another, maybe learn some lessons, or maybe just be at odds with one, or maybe just be at odds. I think it's an interesting idea that I think could have been more explored in an ongoing comic. And we have seen stuff like that in Web Warriors because since this is now a team book and they're not constantly feeling like they have a guillotine over their neck, they allows them moments of reprieve where they can just chat and talk when they're trying to think of plans for to fight the bad guys. They can just talk, they can just sit back, relax, and enjoy themselves. So I thought it was cool, but unfortunately, Web Warriors didn't really. I don't. It looks like Web Warriors didn't really get up there. So as a result, only 11 issues of the book were printed, which I think kind of sucks. But there's really nothing I can do. And again, maybe that's not the reason. Maybe it was always meant to be 11 issues. I don't know. Although I will give my counter argument to that once I'm done talking about the storyline contained in this book. But again, it still sucks that the series only lasted 11 issues. I thought there was a lot of potential that could be done with the book, and unfortunately, that sadly never came to fruition. But with that being said, there is still a storyline to be told, and for better and for worse, Web Warriors did have a finale. The writer clearly was trying to tell a story, and when confronted with the final issues, he did try and find a way to wrap it up in a somewhat satisfactory way. But whether or not that was successful or not, well, that's what we're here to find out. And so today we're going to be taking a look at the final 6 issues of Web Warriors. And to kick things off, we'll be taking a look at Web Warriors number 6. This one's a one-shot, so to speak. We're not going to be looking at the final storyline for Web Warriors till the next video, but this one-shot does offer some interesting plot threads that do come up in that final storyline. And the title of this story is actually called Nobody Knows Nothing. And, well, it's actually told from the perspective of Spider-Man Noir. Basically, the framing device for this story is that Spider-Man Noir is back in his world of Earth 90214, or as it's typically called, the Marvel Noir universe. And what's going on is that Noir, which in the confines of his universe, I suppose I could just call him Peter, since he's not in his Spidey jammies, or well, I guess you can call it his trench coat, whatever. He's on his work attire. We see that Noir as Peter Parker is just kind of in a hotel bar, just chilling, I guess. I don't want to. Okay, maybe not chilling because he's very much clear. It's clearly he's still in his business mindset, as he's clearly trying to pay attention to something. And basically, this waitress is bringing him whiskey. He's guzzling it down. She asks what he's doing, and he says he's working. And he says he's a reporter working on a story, and she says, "Well, I hope it's not a sad story." And he responds with, "Aren't they all?" But basically, while he's sitting there, Basically, Noir recounts everything that's been going on with the Web Warriors and his own history, as he talks about how he was bit by the mystical spider, got spider powers from a spider god, became Spider-Man, began exposing the people in power who were corrupt, and so on and so forth, until he was eventually recruited by Otto Octavius for his superior spider army, and then likewise went on to join the Web Warriors after the Inheritors were taken care of. And basically, he talks about how forming a team of interdimensional Spideys to protect worlds that lost their Spideys, that sounds like a good idea, right? Well, the thing is, Noir has some words about the team, which is where we get to the actual story that we're going on. While the framing device is Spidey Noir just kind of thinking, just kind of remembering all this from his in the bar and from a bar in his world. The actual brunt of the story, it does take place on Loom World and with the Spideys as they do their interdimensional thing. And basically, what's going on in Loom World is, well, the Great Web ain't doing so well. So, after the end of Electroverse, well, of course, Lady Spider wanted to go back to her world, because, she's still her world's resident spider person, and she has to protect it from all the crazy what's-its that's going on. Especially since the last time we saw her world, the Web Warriors had created a giant webbed Faraday cage to contain the Electroverse army. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, Karn's lost the strand for Earth 803, and he can't seem to find it. And so as a result, until he can find that strand, Lady Riley can't access her world. And basically, she's not happy. As she keeps trying, she keeps chewing Karn out for having lost it at all. And while the various Spideys there do try to reassure her and say, "Oh, we're working on the problem. We're working on the problem with all the assistants here. We can find it in no time," so on and so forth. It's not exactly giving her much joy, so to speak, because, well, they're okay, let me put it this way. While they may be trying to help, the social etiquette for this sort of thing is kind of lost in a few of them, particularly Pavitr and Octavia Otto. As Pavitr is taking more joy in studying the web and creating technologies to scan it out, and Octavia is more than happy to help out and expand her own knowledge. But, well, and while they do mean well and they do want to help May Riley get back to her world, well, it comes across more callous than anything, and as a result, May does get a little insulted because of this and even calls them out on it. And even then, as this is going on, Gwen ends up porting into the room and wants to start putting up flyers for her band, which everyone thinks is kind of dumb because, well, literally the only people on Loom World who would even care about her going to a band are the Web Warriors, so that doesn't really do anything. And so pretty much it's just some teamwork. It's just the team having some usual tensions as they're all clashing with one another. And as this is going on, Spider-Man Noir is just kind of chilling up in the web, watching everything, and noticing little details and so on and so forth. And one of these details is something that he quickly points out to the Web Warriors, particularly a strand of the web is on fire. Yeah, nobody really knows how that happens, but it is a strand of the Great Web. So if that strand of the web is on fire, then maybe something is going on with the world it corresponds with. As such, the Web Warriors suit up and go to the world that strand represents, and the world in question is Earth 50101, aka the world of Spider-Man India, aka Pavitr Prabhakar's homeworld. And basically, as the Web Warriors arrive, they find the streets of Mumbai are filled with people as they're running away from something. And of course, Pavitr is concerned and wonders what the hell is going on, since, well, he hasn't been home for a while, so to speak. So, in the crowd, he manages to spot his girlfriend. This reality's equivalent to Mary Jane, known as Mira Jane. And so basically, Mira tells Pavitr that a religious sect has been gaining clout across the city, and they're spreading their influence out. And basically, Pavitr is a little shocked by this and wonders what the heck they're talking about. So you're saying religious nuts are the ones causing this riot? And Mira Jane says, no, they're not religious nuts. They said that they could raise demons, and they succeeded. And it's here we see what the real threat is. And it's here that I should probably mention something. Let me go back to talking about the Spider-Man India miniseries. Now, as I mentioned, after I read the original Spider-Verse storyline, I was curious about the Spider-Man India book and managed to secure myself a copy of said book. And, well, I already gave my thoughts on the book when I introduced Spider-Man India way back when Superior Spider-Man number 32, but in the storyline, But just kind of refresh, in the storyline, the villains that Pavitra faced there essentially all gained their powers from an amulet that summoned demons. The demons would typically take up host in a human body, and as a result, the body would gain demonic superpowers as a result, and that's what led to the creation of that world's versions of the Green Goblin and Doc Ock. But at the climax of the story, as the Green Goblin was attempting to unleash a horde of demons on the world, Pavitra, of course, went in to try and stop him, but in a bid to try and win Pavitra over to his side, the Green Goblin wound up unleashing the power of the amulet onto Pavitra, which resulted in a demon ultimately trying to take up host in Pavitra's body. In this case, that demon was that world's equivalent of the Venom symbiote, and while it did try and sway Pavitra by bringing up his negative emotions and dark thoughts, ultimately Pavitra was able to force it off of it, was able to force it out and gain access to the amulet and suck all the demon hordes inside, including the Green Goblin himself. Thus, the world was saved, it looked like the amulet was lost, everything was all good, and he managed to hook up with Mira Jane, so all's well that ends well. But the thing is, at the end of the comic, and I mean like the very end, final page, last few panels, we saw that the amulet that held the demons was indeed intact, and from it, one demon was we saw that one demon was still active. In this case, the Venom symbiote. Now, in all of Spider-Verse, every time we've seen Spider-Man India, something that always kind of nagged at me after I read that was, why don't they talk about that? Because after all, Spider-Man India never got a sequel. It was the main miniseries only lasted 4 issues, and until Spider-Verse, Spider-Man India was never mentioned in any other form of any Marvel medium again. So I'm just kind of wondering, couldn't they wrap up that loose plot thread or anything? And they don't even have to. And I know that it's going to be kind of hard because, well, the central focus of Spider-Verse was not dealing with an individual threat on any of the universes we saw. It was dealing with an interdimensional threat that affected all the different Spider-Man across the multiverse. So, of course, you wouldn't have the Venom symbiote be the big thing going on. Especially with stuff say, even going back to Spider-Verse War Zones, even in that case you wouldn't probably mention it because in the context of that story, Pavitra thought he lived in another version of New York all his life. And so of course he wouldn't have dealt with that with his world's version of the Venom symbiote there. So, but even when I got to Web Warriors, I kept thinking they can wrap up that loose plot thread. They don't even have to address it. Just maybe have him have an offhand mention. Oh yeah, there was one thing I had to take care of. It was kind of difficult, but I dealt with it. But then we get to this issue, where we have a story dealing with a threat in Pavitra's home universe. I was immediately overjoyed. I was excited. And so can you imagine the smile on my face when I saw the religious sect as they came roaring down the street and all of them were bonded with the Venom symbiote? Yep! That's another benefit that I think works with Web Warriors, because many of the Spideys we see in here are from storylines and comics that were not printed anymore. It allowed us to tune back in and wrap up any loose plot threads that were left hanging at the end of their respective books. And you know what? We finally see that with Spider-Man India, as now we get to see some closure on that ending from his solo book, where now he gets to actually face the Venom symbiote head on, and we see that it has been active since we've last seen it. As now, instead of just being a random demon that's floating around in the river, it's now active again and now trying to take over the world, infecting host after host. Thus, unlike the main universe Venom symbiote, it can bond with multiple people, and yes, it's spreading like an infection, as the Venom symbiote is not just spreading out because it's not just spreading out to take over the world. It's actually infecting people. As anyone it makes contact with, it's able to subsume and turn them into another host for it, and so it just continues on and on and on. And so of course the Web Warriors see this and immediately jump into action. Of course they're putting up a good fight, but there's still the problem of trying to keep all the civilians away from the Venoms, because unfortunately, well, India's full of a lot of people, and so if this thing continues spreading, it could essentially, if enough people get infected, it could just create a pandemic, resulting in the entire world being infected by this thing. And so the Web Warriors realize if they want to stop this, they have to stop it now, or everyone on this world is dead. However, in the midst of all this, Pavitzer does quickly realize what the threat is and decides that he needs to take care of it, though he asks for Lady Spider's help. And so they end up leaving the team as they deal with the Venom symbiote, as they deal with the Venoms, while they go off to try and find the source. And thankfully they do manage to come across a temple. Hold on, let me see if I can find the specific name for the temple, because I know Pavitzer mentions it by name. They end up going to the Ahanta Caves. They end up going to the Ahanta Caves, and Pavitzer reveals that the reason why he wanted Lady Spider there is because since her powers are technological in nature, basically he thinks that she'd be able to handle things that Pavitzer cannot, as he got his powers from a mystical yogi, and this is mystical in nature. So he thinks that she basically have abilities. So basically, she would have some abilities that could counter this, whereas Pavitzer might not. And, well, of course, May Riley's like, well, come on, you're a scientist, you're an engineer, you don't believe in all this random crap, right? Well, immediately the good Lady Riley is proven wrong, as we see Patient Zero for the Venom infection, a giant demonic version of Venom who proclaims to both Spideys that their time is over and that the world belongs to them and all that crap. As such, Pavitzer and May immediately jump into combat and start duking it out with the giant Venom, while in the meantime the Web Warriors are sadly starting to get overwhelmed by all the Venoms and start slowly being consumed, and they start getting assimilated themselves as the Venom symbiotes end up pulling them in. Thankfully, though, on the May and Pavitzer front, in the midst of the battling, the Primo Venom ends up kind of getting agitated enough that it reveals the amulet alive and well, and so Pavitzer tells May to go in and take it out, and sure enough, she's able to swoop in, grab the amulet, and with her mechanical legs, she's able to smash the thing. And sure enough, the instant it's smashed, all the Venom symbiotes across the city end up just dying. They all just go flat, everything falls down, and anyone that was bonded with it ends up getting freed. So, the day is saved. All is well. The demons are stopped. Venom is the Indian version of Venom is no more. All is good, and all is good. Though in the midst of this victory, Spider-Man Noir does kind of note that this victory was just kind of luck-based. They had went in with no plan, no strategy, and they only managed to beat the Venom by the seat of their pants. So he realizes that, well, they're kind of screwed. And so in the midst of everything, as everyone's just kind of calming down from the battle, we see that Noir goes up to what's left of the Venom symbiote and takes a small sample. And so once the Web Warriors return back to Loom World, of course Anya tells Karn that they need to keep an eye on Pavitzer's strand because, well, things clearly got hectic with Pavitzer being absent, so they might want to keep a better eye on some things while the Spideys are on active duty on Loom World. Even Karn admits that he has no idea how the Web of Life and Destiny was set on fire at all. That's not supposed to happen. He's never seen it before. So pretty much this just gets added to the list of things that Karn doesn't know, which, yeah, I'll bring that up after I talk about my thoughts on the comic, but basically Spider-Man Noir decides that, well, if his business is done here, he wants to go back home to his world since, well, his strand hasn't been lost. And so he returns to the Marvel Noir universe, which cuts us back to the, I guess I can say, present day, localized present day, as we see him back at the bar, just kind of minding his own business. And sure enough, we see part of the reason why he's at the bar at all and, well, keeping an eye on things. Because, well, it turns out that little incident with the Venom symbiote wasn't the only thing in the multiverse that was going wonky, because we see what Peter has been watching this whole time, as at the bar he sees a group of ladies just chatting, minding their own business until one of them reaches into her phone or reaches into her purse and pulls out a smartphone. And this is where I have to remind you that the Marvel Noir universe is set in the 1930s. So, why does she have that? Now, of course, you could probably argue, well, maybe time passed differently. No, it did not. Even Peter talks about how Karn mentions how time moves at the same pace across all the universes. So, yes, while it is set in the 1930s here, it shouldn't have just, jumped ahead several decades since the time Peter left. So, why is that smartphone here? As As such, that's what Peter's been doing. Apparently he's been aware of this little abnormality for a while, but has decided not to alert the team because he wants to investigate, get all the facts, and get a proper strategy to combat whatever's going on. Which is where the bit of the Venom symbiote comes in, as he reaches into his pocket and pulls out the vial containing what's left of the Venom symbiote, talking about how he believes that something is coming, that he needs to be prepared, and that wherever in the multiverse Mayday and Billy are, he hopes they're getting prepared as well. So that kind of leaves you with a bit of a chill. And ultimately, we kind of see that things are going hectic in other parts of the multiverse, as the comic then cuts back over to Earth 803, and we see that, yep, Billy and Mayday are alive and well. Whatever Billy was not able. When Billy activated his watch, he and Mayday were not able to leave Earth 803, but they were able to escape the confines of the Faraday cage. Unfortunately, though, they're also kind of stuck on Earth 803. They're trying to make use of the situation however they can, as they try to steer people away from Battery Park, since Faraday cage full of Electros. But even in the midst of all this, Mayday does tell Billy that the cage is starting to get hectic. The web is starting to buckle, and whatever the Electros are doing in there, well, it can't be good. So, that's where the comic ends. So, alright, so thoughts on the issue. As a one-shot, I think it's entertaining, and I think it's entertaining and fun, containing more of the same goodness that I kind of wanted from Web Warriors. In this case, it allows us to continue having more of the interdimensional team of Spideys just doing their own thing, and of course does what I talked about at the beginning of this vlog. Namely, it allows us to wrap up loose plot threads that were left hanging at the end of each of these Spideys' individual stories. Case in point, like I said, the Venom symbiote of the Spider-Man India universe. That was a loose plot thread that was left hanging at the end of Spider-Man India, and so seeing it now be wrapped up in the pages of Web Warriors and addressed and actually have to deal with a thread altogether, except now with a team of Spideys instead of just Pavitr, I think it's fun. I do like that, and it really does make you showcase that this isn't just like static characters that just have the faces of the heroes and nothing else. It's not just there for fan service. They really do have their own stories going on, and so to see those stories get involved in this book and be continued and wrapped up, I think it's great. And yeah, seeing the Spideys actually duke it out with the Indian version of the Venom symbiote was fucking awesome. Seeing them all just jumping around trying to get people out of their tendrils, trying to web them up, with Noir shooting at them while Pavitr and Pavitr and Lady Spider went off to go and deal with the head honcho Venom to try and destroy the amulet. It's fun. I think that's just fun. It's just it's just nice to see that plot thread that get wrapped up, so to speak. But another little thing about the comic that I do like is that it's actually very character focused. While Web Warriors does have its share of character moments throughout the book, as we see the teams interacting and lamenting on certain aspects of their life, so while also allowing them some good character, also allowing them some development as they grow closer to their teammates. Because this comic focuses on Spider-Man Noir, we get to see more of his perspective regarding the whole Web Warriors idea. And we can see that part of the reason why he stays on is because, at his core, he thinks that what they're doing is good. They're protecting worlds that lost their Spideys and dealing with any interdimensional threats that they feel require their attention. That, I think, is nice. And you can see that despite Noir's gruff and grittiness, that alone still showcases that at his core he is still Spider-Man, as he still wants to help others and wants to put his best foot forward. But we also see that while Spider-Man Noir is willing to be a part of all this, he's a bit more dubious because he can kind of see the cracks in the team. He can see that while they can work together in some ways, in other ways they really don't fit. And we kind of see that early in the story with the infighting when Lady Spider's world is lost in the web. Again, it's not really lost; they just lost a strand. The world itself is still fine. But like I said, because we're seeing it from his perspective, you can see the cracks too, and it does kind of showcase that, despite how cool the Web Warriors are, they are also a bit they're also kind of on a shaky surface, and they still haven't found that solid ground yet. They still haven't really found their niche as a team, and as a result, they are still just a bunch of random spider-themed superheroes just trying to do their best just trying to do their best here, and as a result, they still have trouble coordinating. And we see, and again, we see that showcased here as Lady Spider is chewing everyone out for having lost her world. Pavitra and Octavia, while being excited about experimenting in the web and finding her world, have no social grace and really don't really fully understand that may not be so excited about them studying the web as they are, because in her perspective, she just lost her world, and since she's her world, she's the protector of her world, and there's like she said, an army of electric themed supervillains just getting ready to burst and go crazy on the people on a bunch of innocent people across her city, then you just know, of course she's not going to be so excited about the web as all the other Spideys are. So I do kind of see that. But then likewise you have like Gwen who Noir says that her faults are that she's just too good for the team. She doesn't need it, and thus could easily kind of stand on her own. And then you got Ham, who's Spider Ham, who even Noir says he can't really get much of a reading on still. Basically, you can see the cracks in the facade, so to speak. And while it's still, and as a reader, you do want to see this team succeed, but but since we're looking at this from Spider-Man Noir's perspective, and he's kind of a cynic, you can also see the crack. You can also just see the little bits and pieces of the facade of their veneer just cracking away little by little, and I think it works for the most part, because it does still showcase the team is getting ready to grow, but also creates a little bit of tension for the stories going forward, because you know that if the team really isn't as strong as it should be, that means like more threats could come, and because the team isn't as coordinated as they need to be to face them, things can go wrong, and as a result, it does kind of make you go, well, hopefully they can come together soon, which also brings us back to Spider-Man Noir. Because, well, kind of operating on that sense of building plot thread, of building tension for later stories, the comic also introduces more ideas that could be presented for later storytelling. And the first obvious one is that Lady Spider's world has been lost. That's not something that usually happens in these stories. Basically, the Great Web is supposed to be like very easy to navigate. It's a literal web. The Spideys have watches that allow them to jump from world to world, and the Master Weaver can open gateways to universes whenever he to have a world be lost, for starters, that's where things get a little hectic. Something is clearly up in that regard, and they really do want something is clearly up, and it does make you wonder, how could you have lost a world? And then add on the fact that the strand of the web that represented Pavitra's world suddenly caught on fire when things were going crazy in his world. It lets you know that something is still not right with the web. And while Karn chalks it up to that the web is still wonky after what happened with the Electros, and with him being away from it for so long, it doesn't really explain why these things are going wrong, because if these things are popping up, if he's losing entire worlds and a strand has been caught on fire, then it lets you know that things are more dangerous than we know, that there really is something bigger coming up over the horizon, and that while you may not like it, Noir's kind of right. Something big is coming, and the Web Warriors do need to be prepared for it. And likewise, kind of going off of that, we do see more plot threads being laid about, especially in the world of Noir, because the twist with seeing the lady holding a smartphone in a world that's supposed to be set in the 1930s, that's going to make you go, that's going to kind of turn your head a little, because that's an idiosyncrasy. In the words of Miguel O'Hara from Across the Spider-Verse, it's an anomaly. It shouldn't be there. So something is clearly going on across the web. And of course it draws you in, it makes you want to know what's going on and how things will play out. And of course you got the little cutaway to Billy and Mayday at the very end of the book, showcasing that while the Web Warriors were able to successfully capture the Electros, their web is not going to hold long, which that kind of makes sense. While the webbing they used to create the Faraday cage may have been stronger than their standard webbing, it's still webbing. It'll eventually dissolve, so eventually the Electros are going to find a way to break through. So I do like seeing that. I do like that they're laying down those plot threads, and it does make me want. And the first time I read it, it did make me want to know what's going to happen. Where's this going? I want to see all these I want to see how far everything will go from here, and it is good storytelling and does draw me in to want to see more. If I have to list one problem, though, I think it would have to be ironically, the stuff with the Venom symbiote. And I don't mean like the stuff in the Indian universe. Again, I thought that was awesome that we finally got to see that part of the Spider-Man India storyline get wrapped up. To have that little bit of sequel hook at the end of Spider-Man India finally get resolved in the page of the book. That was awesome. And I can give another comment before I get to the flaw. I like that we get to see, because Spider-Man Noir is the one narrating the story, we do, like, not only do we get a sense of how he looks at the team, we also get another sense of his character, which, if you read the Spider-Man Noir comics like I did, then you already know his character. He's kind of a stone-cold cynic while also having his fair share of oops moments that help remind you that he's still Spider-Man. But at that same tone, but we also get a bit more of why throughout the comic we also get a bit of flashback to when he was a kid, and we see another reason why he's kind of dubious about the team and sees more of the cracks in them versus actually being able to versus actually wanting to cooperate with them. In this case, because when he was a kid, well, here's the thing. You gotta remember that Spider-Man Noir is an alternate Peter Parker, and like most versions of Peter Parker, he was kind of a dork and a nerd growing up, and and of course, being a dork and a nerd, he was bullied, made fun of, and beat up, so to speak. And after one particular time when he got the shit kicked out of him, he wound up running into a group of kids who offered him a hand and wanted to just hang out with him. And so for a while, Peter was just friends with this group of kids, just got into trouble, went to the watering hole, had fun, so to speak, and he thought, oh, these are my friends, I trust these guys implicitly, I love being around them, and so on and so forth. But the thing is, it turns out that Peter's friends weren't exactly very nice kids, as apparently they liked to steal, break and enter, and apparently they stole money for this random kid that lived in the back streets. And when Peter finally called them out on this and asked them if they were really going through with this, well, his friends wound up beating the shit out of him too, and ran away, essentially causing Peter to be friendless, and turning him more into the stone cold cynic that we know today. Which I think actually can align with what we saw in the Spider-Man Noir books, as while he was willing to trust certain people in the thing, he wasn't really much of a team. I guess you could say he wasn't much of a team guy, so to speak. But it does help showcase why he's a bit more dubious of the Web Warriors, despite the fact that he does agree that it is a good idea, because ultimately you can see that he doesn't fully trust anybody. Yes, most of the Web Warriors are alternate versions of himself. Okay, a handful of them are alternate versions of himself, if you want to get technical, but at the very least, you can see that he is still. You can see that while he knows they all have good intentions, he's still wary of them, and thus makes his own plans behind the scenes in case things go south. So think of it like Batman with the Justice League. While he does trust them and considers them friends, he creates contingency plans behind the scenes in case things go south. So in a way, you can say that Spider-Man Noir is the Batman of the Web Warriors, which actually is appropriate, considering that he's the noir superhero, so to speak. But again, I kind of like that we get to see more of his character. Again, it feels a little bit more rough and gritty than when I saw from the original Noir comics, but but I'm okay with it here, as it does kind of showcase more of his backstory and more of his drive as a character. But again, kind of going back to that flaw I mentioned before, the Venom symbiote. The little bit of the Venom symbiote that he brought back to his universe. Well, much like in Spider-Verse, with the plot thread being dropped, with the plot thread of Superior Spider-Man, Assassin Spider-Man, and Ashley Barton potentially having to fight the other Spider people in order for the right to kill the Inheritors, the plot thread with Spider-Man Noir having a remnant of the Venom symbiote never comes up again. Not even kidding. At no point in this book, or in any other bit of Spider-Verse related media, does the fact that Spider-Man Noir having a piece of the Venom symbiote ever come back. It never comes back into play. It's never referenced again. It's never talked about again. It's just, oh, he has a bit of the Venom symbiote, and then that's it. There's really no answer to it. Again, you could make the argument that, and here's what I suspect. I suspect that what was going to happen is that potentially this could have led to Noir bonding to that version of the Venom symbiote and like maybe getting his own version of the symbiote suit. And of course, he deals with the same shit that most other Spideys deal with when they get the symbiote, unless the Web Warriors have to break him free and he realizes, okay, I can trust you guys and so forth, and then maybe it leads to the birth of the Noir version of Venom, which I think could have been awesome, but again, that plot thread does not come back in the story. It's just dropped after this, which I think further showcases one of the problems that I'm going to be relaying when I talk about the storyline. So if I had, so again, it's a cool idea though. The idea of him actually getting this thing and having it be a backup plan because of how untrustworthy, because of how he's dubious of the Web Warriors until he actually realizes, okay. But because he was so untrustworthy, he does something that bites him in the ass, and thus the people that he was originally dubious of have to come in and save them, and come in and save him. That would have been, I think, a cool idea for a plot, for a story, but again, because it never gets answered, this plot thread ultimately goes nowhere. It's left hanging by the end of the book, much like with the Venom symbiote at the end of Spider-Man India. Except whereas that got answered in this book, there is no follow-up. It's just never mentioned again, which I think just sucks, and I really would have liked it if it had come back later, so I am going to list that as a flaw. Otherwise, though, I think this storyline, or I think this story, is a pretty good one. Again, it's cool to see the plot thread from the loose plot thread from Spider-Man India get wrapped up. It's nice that we get to see more plot. It's nice that they're laying down more plot threads for later parts of the story, like with the web being haywire, Billy and Mayday still being lost and they're still trying to find them, and then likewise the stuff with Spider-Man and War investigating the anomalies in his world with people having modern technology there. Unlike what or the modern technology there, and likewise with the Electros on Mayday on Lady Spider's world, getting ready to break free from their cage. I think that's cool. I like the character stuff we get with Spider-Man Noir in the comic as we learn more of his history and showcase why he could be still dubious of the team, despite the fact that he does think it's a legitimately good idea. And ultimately, it does raise enough tension to showcase where things are going to go from here, make you want to see where things are going to go from here. And on the whole, I think the comic is still a pretty good issue. Nice little standalone story that lays down plot threads for future storylines while also keeping you engaged in what you have right now. So, yeah, that's about it. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and hope you tune in Tuesday as we actually do take a look, as we do finally start looking at the final storyline of Web Warriors proper, and see just exactly what's going on with the Great Web. So, till then, I hope you have a good day. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I'll see you on Tuesday. Take care.